A warm embrace between Vice President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in 2010, a sight we may not see again anytime soon. Following the social and political chaos in Israel over the last few days, the Biden administration is becoming more outspoken, with the president saying that Israel cannot continue down this road. Biden also noted that Netanyahu will not be invited to the White House anytime soon. Netanyahu responded by stating that he will only be influenced by what he views as the best for Israel, whilst affirming that the US-Israeli relationship is, quote, unshakable. But is this very public cold shoulder from Israel's greatest ally proof that the relationship is, in fact, shaky? Biden also said that he spoke for most American Jews in wanting to hold the reforms. But does the opinion of the Jewish diaspora actually matter to Netanyahu? Could Israel stand up for itself against the United States, or is Washington too powerful? Who needs the other one more? What's next for American-Israeli relations?
Okay, gentlemen, let's get to it. What's next for U.S.-Israel relations? As always, we'll begin with a quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick it up from there. So, Joel Rubin, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
Well, what's next right now is the ball's in Bibi's court. Does Bibi Netanyahu want to have an agreement with the opposition of Israel to bring consensus to Israel so that it lives up to its democratic values? Or does he want to go the way of Turkey and Poland and Hungary and move Israel into that of authoritarian regimes? It's really up to him. President of the United States, Joe Biden, standing up for Israeli democracy, standing up for Israeli security, and speaking truth that the Israeli people themselves know, as we've seen from the protests over the last several months.
Josh Hasten, your take?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely preposterous that the Biden administration is focused on an internal Israeli issue. You know, we just had one American murdered in a terror attack. We had another American seriously wounded in a terror attack. And how is that not the focus? How is the judicial reform, so to speak, the focus? And unfortunately, the Biden administration taking it out on Netanyahu when so many other things are going on affecting the American people.
Okay, last but not least, Yaki Dayan, your take?
Shaky situation. No doubt Israel is in a very crucial junction that the strength of Israel in Washington is the bipartisan support. And the crucial junction is whether Israel is going to stay connected to the two parties in the United States, or whether we are heading only towards good relations with the Republicans and not so good relations with the Democrats. No doubt that will jeopardize the many of the assets that Israel has in Washington and internationally.
Okay, and on that note, gentlemen, let's please feel free to interact from this point onwards. I do want to begin, though, with your thoughts on the Biden comments. Was it a planned you know what? Let's leave the illegitimate debate for a bit later. But was it a planned public telling off on behalf of the president, or was it more like speaking from the gut type of a flutter that we're seeing from the American president every once in a while, Joel Rubin?
Sure. Now, this was Joe Biden in classic Joe Biden form. He's always been like this. He was asked about gay marriage years ago, if you remember, when he was vice president. He said, yes, we should support it. And this is the exact same dynamic. Joe Biden is Joe Biden. He's been a leader for 50 years. But clearly, he has been talking about this behind the scenes with his team. He's spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu multiple times over the past several months. He understands the issue intimately, better than any president in the history of the United States, frankly, in terms of being engaged with Israel, going back to Golda Meir. So he spoke truth. This is what he thinks. He doesn't want to have Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting the United States until he gets his own house in order domestically. The U.S. didn't create this crisis. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu's self-generated crisis on Israeli democracy. The United States is not imposing anything. The United States is watching it, and out of concern for our close ally and dear friend, the President of the United States is standing in and saying, you all need to resolve this. And that's the most important part of our relationship right now.
Yes, the U.S. not creating this crisis, as you put it, Joe Rubin, but Josh Hasten, is the U.S. overstepping the line here?
Yeah, absolutely. This administration is completely overstepping the line, and they're not representing the will of the American people who are so pro-Israel. The vast majority of Americans stand with Israel, regardless of who the leader is in the United States. So the Biden administration here, look, the bottom line is there's so many other issues. You have Iran that's about to go nuclear. And this is what the Biden administration, the head of the free world, is talking about. He's talking about an internal Israeli issue, judicial reform, just literally after Netanyahu, whether you like it or not, Netanyahu decided to freeze, at least for now, temporarily, the judicial reform plan. Nevertheless, this is the focus of the most powerful nation in the world. He's completely overstepped. The media in the United States.
It's not the focus.
Like Thomas Friedman.
It's not the focus.
Cutting me off.
No, we encourage interaction here. So yeah,
we're encouraged. Yeah, no, that's not the focus of the United States.
The media comparing Netanyahu to Putin. Give me a break. Putin is bombing innocent civilians in Ukraine, and you have top-level fighters in the U.S.
This is
absolutely preposterous and ridiculous.
Okay, yeah.
People do not believe it.
So let's just be clear. This is not the focus of American policy towards Israel. But Israel, the prime minister fired the defense minister, our primary point of contact for military communications, overnight with one line because of this judicial reform. This is an internal Israeli crisis that has spilled out. So to act as if the United States has no interest in this when we provide significant security assistance to Israel and partner with Israel in confronting regional threats. We just were at 2 summits with Arab countries to deal with Palestinian terrorism. We've been supporting the Abraham Accords. That is the agenda of the United States. But this issue, Israeli democracy, creating the uncertainty that we're witnessing in the streets of Tel Aviv, in the prime minister's office, that can't be ignored by the president of the United States.
Yeah, a former diplomat, always a diplomat. Yaki Dayan, chime in, please.
No, I wanted to say that we have to take into consideration that that's the first time that the United States is actually interfering in a very internal issue, which is not security or diplomatic. And it's not by coincidence. It is because they see this government and they see how this government is leaning towards the right. They see that this government has statements about burning Hawara and going to Temple Mount and building illegal outposts, and they see that this ship is turning to the right, and this is not something that the United States want to see. And more than that, and that we have to take into account as well, is the firing of the Minister of Defense, Gallant, because he was the closest partner in the Israeli government to the United States. Only 2 ministers, him and Ron Dermer, were in speaking terms with the United States, and he was speaking about all the issues from Iran to Syria and all the security issues. And once Netanyahu decided to fire Gallant, they lost their closest ally in the government. So they see the shift towards the right, and there is a fear within the American administration that they are losing, that Israel is losing their path, and they are worried. They are worried because they know that we have extremely important issues on the agenda now, such as Iran, such as many other issues. And if this government is leaning to the right, and the statements of Netanyahu that Iran is the most important issue, and then the Abraham Accords are not really the most important issues.
But Yaki Dayan, according to what you're saying, we need to call a spade and take into consideration that the White House or any administration in Washington has a political hidden agenda, so to speak, and wants to influence the administration here in Israel. And Josh, I want to go back to you. Is it
but it's not just one point. It's not a hidden political agenda. I think that it's because we have such a good and intimate strategic relations. They feel that the United States feel that they can intervene. Otherwise, it's not a political issue. It's an international issue that it's going to affect from the security issues from the Security Council to the International Criminal Court in Hague. So it's important, and we have to take into account what our best and maybe only friend in the world is saying here.
Josh.
The Biden administration is not respecting the Israeli democracy. Israel went to the polls back in November. Whether you like it or not, Netanyahu formed a coalition, whether it's to the United States' liking or not. That's sorry, but that's what the people of Israel wanted. That's what the people of Israel voted for. You mentioned Iran. So the question is, what is the U.S. doing to thwart a potential nuclear Iran? And the answer is, I don't know. because it seems like they're doing nothing to thwart the Iranian nuclear threat. Right now, Israel is faced with an existential threat. The Biden administration says they want to return to diplomacy or whatnot. They're taking an internal Israeli issue. There are plenty of people to talk to in Israel. Gallant isn't the only person, by the way, technically he wasn't even fired, but that's besides the point. There are plenty of people to talk to here in Israel.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
No, technically he was not. He's
Not
still
yet.
in his post
Not
today,
yet.
but
Okay, yeah.
Not fired yet, but that's besides the point. The point is, what is the United States administration doing to thwart Iran? What is the United States doing to stop the pay-for-sleep program of the Palestinian Authority? You have a dead American. You have a U.S.
No, but Josh, you know, it's not for nothing that in Hebrew, a state is referred to as a female. States can, multitask to deal with several items on the agenda. Joe,
I can, Ellie, I can go through a whole list of things the United States is doing on Iran, primarily implementing robust sanctions and partnering with Israel on massive military exercises and providing Israel with tremendous military aid and support and weekly coordination between the intelligence and defense services, diplomatic support. The list goes on and on. That's not the issue.
And the enriched uranium is going up and up. Uranium is going up and up and up.
If Josh, if you want to debate about Iran, you can thank Donald Trump for Iran's accelerating nuclear program. It was boxed in until Trump got out of the nuclear deal. But let's move that to the side. The reality is that the Israeli president is absolutely true, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is independent. Listen, the Israeli people, president of Israel, they are speaking about the need for democratic change that is effective and serves all the country. That is what is speaking. And you haven't addressed that yet. You're saying that somehow it's as if the United States is creating this problem. No, this is Israeli people themselves protesting in the streets in massive amounts. The country was on the verge of a general strike, a shutdown. It was only going to get worse.
Yes, Joel, but before we take a break, the question being, and again, I'm really pushing it here because we are taking a break in a split second, is the fact that the U.S. is providing Israel with military support, with aid, etc., is buying its way, so to speak, to chime in politically.
Not buying its way. President Biden did Bibi Netanyahu a favor by asking him to pull back. It calmed the country down. That's what a friend does.
Yeah, a friend reflects the truth, whether you like it or not. This is what many pundits are suggesting. Okay, on that note, stop blabbing, Ellie. We're taking a short break, but when we get back, we have so much more to unpack. Obviously, you're staying with us. Joe Rubin, Yaki Dayan, and Josh Hasten. Thank you very much for this. Again, staying with us, and we pick it from there right after the break. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Josh Hasten, Joe Rubin, Yaki Dayan. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic, of course, but before we get back to our conversation, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir saying today that Israel is no star on the U.S. flag, and he's not alone whatsoever. Coalition members not welcoming this quote-unquote friendly advice coming out of Washington. So I-24 News' Hamda Salhut is at the Israeli president's residence, where, by the way, protests kept on going throughout the day there. So here's the latest from Hamda.
Protesters continuing to take to the streets here, where talks are underway between the presidential delegation, the coalition, and members of the opposition over these judicial overhaul bills that have been the subject of a firestorm within the state of Israel, so much so that criticism from the United States has flooded the headlines. U.S. President Joe Biden saying that the state cannot continue on like this and that the prime minister must reconsider. Itamar Ben-Gvir coming out swinging, saying that Israel is not a star on the U.S. flag any longer. Now, the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, also saying she's extremely concerned about what's going on within the state. Several Israeli lawmakers saying that they don't think the United States should be meddling meddling within internal Israeli affairs. But experts are saying should this rift happen between Israel and the United States, it would really be a turning point for Israel in the diplomatic arena. Benjamin Netanyahu not invited to the White House just yet. President Biden saying that is still yet to come. We're waiting to see how these negotiations will go, just how fruitful they will be, and what the reaction will be from the Americans.
Okay, gentlemen, so let's get to it. Another quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance, and we pick up the debate from there. Could Israel stand up for itself, by itself, and more so, could Israel stand up against the United States? Yaki Dayan, please take the lead.
The United States is giving Israel more than $3.8 billion a year, security assistance, all the diplomatic issues being handled by the United States from the Security Council, in the International Forum, from the Security Council to the International Criminal Court of The Hague. We are having economic cooperation, intelligence cooperation. I think that this is not only the strongest and the best strategic ally that we have, but the only one. So we have to take into consideration fulfilling and reaching the goals that the Prime Minister himself set, Iran, and expanding the Abraham Accords.
Okay, Josh Hasten, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that the U.S.-Israeli relationship is extremely strong, and it's much stronger than one individual or one person. But again, it's completely unacceptable that this administration is putting pressure on Israel in regard to, it isn't even in regard to judicial reform. That's really the guise. That's really the excuse. What we're talking about here is people who do not want to see Prime Minister Netanyahu and the right wing in power. And this was the perfect opportunity to seize upon that belief that Netanyahu should not be the head of the state of Israel. And that is where President Biden and his team are. Boy, do I miss the days of Ambassador David Friedman, I'll tell you that.
I'm sure David Friedman misses the day of Ambassador David Friedman as well. Yeah, Joe Rubin, you didn't speak. Sorry. Take the lead. Take the floor.
That's okay. I should also mention Ambassador Friedman opposes these judicial reforms. So let's just mention that. But what a disaster it would be if the United States and Israel were to have a break. As an American Jew, my personal connection and commitment to Israel is lifelong. And the United States and Israel, we share common values. And that's what this is all about. Ultimately, this is about a partnership that goes beyond individuals, goes to the depth of who we are as people and our values. A break would be disastrous for Israel. It would be disastrous for the United States and the American Jewish community.
But, gentlemen, let's please feel free to respectfully interact. Of course, Yaki Dayan, is it a wake-up call of sorts for Israel to become less reliant on its best friend in the world, or should it protect it at all costs?
It's not protected by all costs, and Israel is a strong country, but no doubt that in order to reach the goals that Netanyahu himself set, fighting Iran, expanding the Abraham Accords, and having a strong, vibrant economy here in Israel, we need the United States. And it's not that we have to do whatever the United States say, but when they do say and when they do intervene, this is for the good of the state of Israel. So we have to listen carefully. And I heard what Josh was saying. Listen, don't miss Friedman. He was, Trump was a great president for Israel, but Israel has to work both with the Republicans and the Democrats, and we have a very good friend in Washington, D.C. now, in Pennsylvania 1600. And we have to know to work with Biden as well. He doesn't want to take Netanyahu. He doesn't want to see Netanyahu out. He was respecting the elections. The only thing that Biden wants to see is a democratic, vibrant Israel. He's a very good friend of Israel, and we have to treat him like that, because we might not see in the near future such a friendly democratic president.
And by the way, just to mention that the current U.S. ambassador to Israel, Thomas Nides, also with a very deep, unique connection to Israel, and he suggested only a short days ago that an invitation is fast approaching. I do want to take a different angle or bring in a different angle to our discussion. Joel Rubin, Biden also spoke about the fact that most American Jews wanting to halt the reforms, but should diaspora Jews have a say on Israeli affairs?
Well, look, my mother, who's a lifelong pro-Israel, committed Jewish woman, is very concerned. Yes, of course we should. We have family in Israel. We're connected. We're tied at the hip. Our communities, and we value each other. We care, and we care about Israel's vitality. And so, as an American Jew, we are connected to Israel through and through, and that means our opinion matters. And I think there is a shift, though, and I think to the general's point, look, American Jews historically have deferred to the elected government of Israel, period, and whatever it says goes, and that's pro-Israel. But right now, what we're seeing in American Jewish life is a commitment to the people of Israel. And the people of Israel are speaking. It's a very broad, dynamic coalition across all sectors of Israeli society. We're connected people to people. We have cousins. My cousins span the political spectrum in Israel. And this support for the people of Israel, the state of Israel, the community of shared values, that's what we're talking about. When you see this criticism, it comes from a place of care and concern. And it's also worth noting that 3/4 of American Jews tend to vote Democratic. And this matters to the base of the Democratic Party. We are, in many ways, the strength for Israel in the Democratic Party. And we need to be able to feel like we're actually being heard.
Yes, but briefly, Yaki, because I want Josh to...
before going to Josh, maybe. There are only 15 million Jews in the world, less than in 1939. And most of them live in two centers. Most of them live in the state of Israel, and the other half lives in the United States. And we don't have a privilege of losing any Jew now because we are only 15 million. So we have to embrace and we have to listen very carefully to what the Jews in the United States say, because they are part of the family.
Okay. Yes, Josh, wrap it up for us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is part of the family, but it seems like your guest is saying that everyone's part of the family, but if you have a government that we don't like, then even though normally we embrace the Israeli government, in this case, we're going to ignore that, and we're going to turn our attention to the Israeli people. In other words, we're not going to respect the Israeli democracy. We're not going to respect what happened in November when the voters voted in Prime Minister Netanyahu and a right or right of center coalition. In this case, it seems that your guest is saying, and we're not going to accept it. And that is, that's despicable. And the comments made by Biden, look, Israel is, we know this, somebody coined the phrase, Israel is the biggest U.S. air carrier in the Middle East. We know we're great friends. And again, I said it before, it extends way past what administration. We survived the Obama administration, which was an absolute disaster. We survived the Clinton administration, where we got the Oslo Accords, and we had Jewish blood flowing in the streets as a result of those hideous Oslo Accords and everything that was resulted from them.
The Obama administration created.
They have to respect the Israeli democracy, and he's not willing to do that.
I served in the Obama administration. Josh, the Obama administration created the Iron Dome that has saved Israeli lives. The Iron Dome system commissioned by Barack Obama.
Gentlemen, one matzah ball, two matzah balls. It's the same bowl of soup. On that note, thank you very much, Yaki Dayan, Rubin, Josh Hasten. 2 minutes, and we're back.